Hi everybody, I am back with another video, and as always I am going to preface this video by saying this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is my research and my opinions on my research. If you don't agree with anything, please just scroll. My research is mainly from the Wright and Benstock blog. They are attorneys out of Houston, Texas. The article that my video was taken from can be found readily on the internet through Google. This video is concerning covert sexual abuse and emotional incest. And of course, I've got my notes, and I'll be reading a lot from them, so thank you for joining me. What is covert sexual abuse? First of all, we need to define what the word covert means. And it is defined as not openly acknowledged or displayed. There are many obvious types of sexual abuse, but not many people have heard of the term covert sexual abuse. When people think of sexual trauma, they often imagine unwanted physical sexual contact and other forms of physical contact, such as groping. Or, let's say, hypothetically, a brother or an uncle who mouth kisses their sister or niece, who is not their blood, by adoption, and is 11 and 22 years their junior. But what happens if someone feels as though they have endured sexual abuse, even if there is no known history of it? This can arise from covert, which is often non-contact, but no less insidious. Insidious is defined as proceeding in a gradual, subtle way, but with harmful effects. Forms of sexual abuse. There are 5 main forms of sexual abuse: verbal, covert, visual, physical, and ritualistic. Understanding the specifics of each is critical when it comes to understanding how covert sexual abuse is different. Verbal sexual abuse can involve both spoken and written words that are used to imply or overtly express sexual content. Many people experience this form of abuse over the internet, in certain social settings, or even at work. It is common for crude jokes of a sexual nature to receive a pass in the name of comedy. But even comedy can cross a line. Some specific examples are sexually charged jokes, descriptions of sexual content, comments about one's body, sexual text messages, and even phone calls. Or, let's say, hypothetically, an uncle who tells his niece that it's too bad she has dark hair because blonde poo nanny tastes sweeter than dark poo nanny. Or, hypothetically, a brother, when alone with his sister, evaluates other females' appearances in a sexual manner, including his opinions on breast size, and then telling her she's pretty but looks like a boy on the top. And then, hypothetically, said uncle takes the niece to the bank, co-signs her first loan, takes her to a plastic surgeon where breast implants with microchips are inserted, and then upon healing, asked to see her breasts. Covert abuse. Some people endure covert abuse without even knowing it. You can be a victim of this form of abuse if someone photographs you, stalks you on social media, follows you, or even observes you with the intent of gaining sexual satisfaction without your knowledge. One of the more common forms of covert abuse is also referred to as covert incest or emotional incest. It is unfortunately common for people to suffer covert abuse from family members. Or, let's say hypothetically, an uncle who photographs his niece in a bikini in his basement, guiding her onto the pool table and telling her to place her arms in a certain way to make her breasts appear larger, and then conveniently misplacing the photos. Visual abuse. If someone shows another person wanted sexual content or images, this is one form of visual abuse. Other forms include being nude or dressing inappropriately in front of someone, sending sexual images to someone, or performing sexual acts in front of someone without their consent. Or, let's say, hypothetically, a brother who is on the opposite end of a couch with his sister lays down, spreads his legs towards her, and begins to massage his manhood while making lewd comments about the females on set. Or, how about an uncle who offers his niece a seat on the couch where he is sitting, turns on the television to a pornographic station, and the entire screen is a moving image close up of sexual intercourse. Physical abuse. Physical sexual activity is what most people envision when it comes to sexual abuse. However, it is only one of the many forms of sexual abuse. Examples of physical sex abuse include unwanted touching, kissing, tickling, any form of intercourse, and other forms of non-consensual touching. Ritualistic abuse. Ritualistic sexual abuse can occur in tandem with some form of spiritual or religious ritual. Oftentimes, perpetrators use religion and spirituality to justify their actions to their victims. Examples of ritualistic abuse include child marriage, citing chance during abusive acts, and much more. Overt sexual trauma and covert sexual trauma sound similar, but they have very important differences. In order to qualify as overt abuse, the perpetrator must make physical contact with the victim without their consent for their own sexual gratification. Covert sexual trauma is very different, and it can happen in many different ways. One of the key ways to identify covert abuse is by examining how the abuse has affected self-worth and mental health of the victim. Perhaps the covert abuse leads to codependency, unhealthy patterns between victim and abuser, mental health problems, sex addiction, or even personality disorders. Abusers often hold power over their victims. An adult family member may manipulate a victim into staying silent about the abuse by telling them the abuse is their fault. An abusive partner may use guilt or physical restraint to force their partner or spouse into unwanted sexual contact. Covert sexual abuse is unlike overt incest in that it doesn't involve physical contact between the victim and abuser. In some cases, overt and covert abuse exist in tandem. Covert is the indirect sexual abuse or use of a child, romantic partner, or family member by a parent, step-parent, or long-term caregiver. Covert is implied through words and actions. Additionally, survivors and victims of covert incest often feel conflicted about their experiences. They may feel as though their experiences are not as serious as those who suffer overt abuse. However, covert incest victims often show the same symptoms as victims of overt incest. Survivors often feel the effects of the trauma, but they are hesitant or unable to speak up about their experiences. What is emotional incest? Emotional incest is an abusive relationship between two or more family members, often between caregiver and child. The adult uses the family member for emotional fulfillment that they are not receiving in other areas of their life. These relationships often have a sexual undertone and lead to an incestuous feeling for the victim. Some examples include invasions of privacy. Let's say, hypothetically, entering the bathroom while the victim is showering. Having inappropriate conversations about their adult relationships, and being too interested in the victim's physical development and appearance. The signs of covert sexual abuse and emotional incest are often very subtle. It is possible for the victim to not understand that the relationship is inappropriate. However, the victim can feel trapped in the relationship and used by the abuser. At the same time, the victims own needs are often ignored or neglected in order to prioritize the needs of the abuser. Because of this, many victims of emotional incest syndrome do not develop an understanding of healthy relationships. The impact of covert abuse and incest can span generations in the form of intergenerational trauma. Survivors may experience any of the following consequences as a result of the abuse: self-esteem issues, problems with their sex life, tendencies of self-harm, lack of self-care, depression or anxiety, anger, shame, guilt or embarrassment, emotional and mental health issues. The impact of any form of sexual abuse can be massive for survivors. After being silently seduced and abused for years, many victims seek professional help, and others stand and deal with it themselves. In closing, my petition to you is to be kind. Just because you may not have experienced overt or covert abuse does not mean that it doesn't exist. It exists every day, all day, right under your nose. That irritable cashier at Walmart, the beggar in the parking lot, or the person who cuts you off in traffic may be dealing with stuff you have no idea about. They need your kindness, not your judgment. On the other hand, if you are aware of abuse, say something. You may be the difference made in someone giving up or continuing on. And for the love of all that is holy, if someone speaks up regarding any injustice, don't be the one saying, "Quit living in the past." Just let it go. Or, "You have a victim mentality." Those are the people who have more courage in their pinky toe than some people have in their entire body. Thank you for listening.